Get on the train before it leaves the station. The truth train is coming, gonna run them down, run them down.
All right, hello everybody, how you doing? Okay, we're back with part 2 of my little chat with Millbilly and Paul. Now, I tried a little something different this one. Instead of cutting myself out completely and inserting, bits of me speaking to you like this, I went ahead and kind of voiced over and kind of giving you guys the gist of what I was saying as it leads in, so that the flow of the conversation isn't really interrupted. And so I went ahead and tried that this time. I once again am very sorry that my settings got screwed up on my recording software and I ended up not getting my bit. Life of a YouTuber, you just have little mishaps like this, and I should have done something else, but also I should have been taking steps to make sure I was getting a good recording, and so I should have taken an extra minute to do that. So lesson learned. So what I've done here is basically summing up whatever it was I was saying that led into the next comment by Millbilly or Paul. So, all right. So what we're talking about today is, once again, it's a continuation of the King Kratz Cuss Road thing, but we got off into some more topics. We ended up getting into Michael Bell, Michael Funk, which, by the way, I'm wearing a shirt right here, folks. You can see. We're considering making this available on the Zazzle store. Here's, you can see the back. So that's what's on the back of it right there. That's Michael Funk. So we're considering making these. So let me know what you think of it. If you thought it would look good, or if you thought maybe there was something, let me know what you think in the comments section. But this is something we're considering to have available on the Zazzle store to help create more awareness of Michael Funk. So, just wanted to let everybody know that. We got into talking about Kratz. We got to talking about quite a few things. I mean, Paul even brings up Luke Mitchell over there in Scotland, which is another case that's kind of like Brendan's. It has some similarities. So we had a little bit of a round robin discussion, and we just discussed a lot of various things, about the case and about even other cases. So it was very interesting discussion. So I'm going to try and get them back together. I'm going to get them back, and I'm going to see if maybe I can even get a few other YouTubers, and if we can do something on New Year's. Millbilly said he's going to be working on New Year's. I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess he'll be working when the ball drops. I don't know. But I think maybe he does work nights. So, but if he can't make it, that's all right. Him and I and Paul can go again anytime. It's whenever he's not, whenever he's free, when he doesn't have to work. Then him and I and Paul can get together and go. So it just so happened he had the other night off, so we were able to record. So, like I said, I do apologize for the fact that I had my settings screwed up, and but I tried to do my best here to insert what it was I was saying so that it doesn't disrupt really the flow of the conversation. So let's move into it right now. Here we go.
It's not technically not Stephen Avery's property. It's Roland Johnson's. And the land on the trailer, he owned it before they did. He's been there for almost 30 years. And that was as of 2006. So he even tried suing Calumet and Manitowoc for all the destruction they did to their property.
Here I mentioned to Millbilly that it was actually Jody who was renting the trailer from Raleigh.
Yeah, he rented Jody first, and when he first rented it to Jody, Stephen was still living in the ice shack. He didn't move in till later on.
Yeah,
he started dating her, and I believe in August of 2004. He was living in the shanty still in September. As of September 11th of 2004, he was still living in the ice shanty. And that bench we see burnt on the fire pit, that was from the ice shanty that he had burned a weekend, the time before he burned something. So he did not burn that night either. And with the brush, they also burned the table that was given to him by Tom Yonda that he left outside that got weathered on, so it was pretty much junk. Barb was mad that he burned it because she was going to take it and screw it to the wall in the garage and use it as like a shelf. And she was mad. He burned it. I mean, there's just little things I pick up.
Yeah. You've just mentioned something that, again, it reminded me of that Rollie Johnson call where Rollie Johnson is complaining about, that they excavated that burn pit and just, completely took that burn pit away and just dumped the soil elsewhere. It was like they were desperately looking for something that they knew perfectly well wasn't there, but they still had to go through that process of
Well, they completely made that area look like they destroyed the whole area. The burn pit was just the burn spot area is just so small. They took up the whole damn area. There's piles of dirt that they dumped.
At this point, we got to talking about item CX, and that is one of the DNA profiles found over in the quarry.
I mean, as I replied to, is it the somebody Jamie Van Hoot or sorry, what's Jamie Van
Jamie Van Hout?
Yeah, was asking that same question. Why about the item CX and the blood stain on the back? Why was that never processed? Well, because when you're framing somebody, you don't want your experts to come up with the wrong. With the wrong stuff. That's what it boils down to. I've got a kind of a vague question I was going to ask the pair of you, and that is that we discovered, don't we, that most district attorneys, their career path is they go from being a district attorney to either being a judge or going into politics. Do you think there's any significance to the fact that Ken Kratz was so interested in politics? I don't know about you. I do not trust politicians at all, and I'm just wondering if the ones that are bad becomes judges, and the ones that are really really bad, they become politicians.
That's why we have some kind of hope with Evers, because he's not really a politician. He spent his whole life in.
And here I'm saying some become both, like Schimmel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eva's background was is actually education, isn't it?
Tony Evers.
Tony Evers, yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Here I am talking about the recent Laura Nyrider tweet where she talked about how she was doing math problems with her son, and he had, asked if Brendan got out in 30 years, would he be 60? And she basically said, yeah, the math is right, but Governor Evers, this is an outrage, like she was appealing to him as obviously a former educator and somebody who cares about kids.
Yeah, but it's just that he's eligible for parole in 2048 when he'll be 59. But of course, he'll only get parole if he admits to having done something.
At this point, I just talk about how much I dislike the fact that the state is able to hedge their bets kind of in that way and do that and pull that kind of behavior.
Yeah, I mean, the system is bad enough as it is. When it gets really out of control is when you get people like Ken Kratz running it. That's when it really gets to be a problem, because he doesn't just bend the rules; he completely breaks them. And it'll be interesting to see what the Court of Appeals thinks about the handing back of the bones when that is such a blatant, misuse of. Well, it goes against the very statute that they wrote. You were talking earlier about the fact that Billy, about people in Wisconsin. There are some people in Wisconsin that have never watched Making a Murderer. They've never studied up about it. All they know is what they heard first time round, and they were told this ghastly story, press conference about what happened. And the idea is that when you've got a district attorney doing a press conference, he wouldn't be saying this stuff unless it was facts, would he? Well, yeah, folks, he would exactly do that, in order to try and further his career. I don't know what can we hope for in the future that when this all blows up, that the Court of Appeals are going to look at that and say this is such a blatant misuse of power that something has to be done. This is, for me, one of the problems with Steve accepting the fact that he's taken the 400,000 and there's no liability placed on Manitowoc.
Are they going to grant the evidentiary hearing first, or just give him a new trial?
Well, I would be surprised if they decide to try him again.
I mean,
I would be surprised.
Definitely have to take a look at the evidence. I mean, the suppression of just the Veely CD, all the Denny,
all the Brady violations, and then you say the fact that they will then have Bobby as a Denny suspect. Although, that would only come into play really if it went to trial, wouldn't it? It's only when you go to trial that you would need that Kathleen would have that Denny suspect already lined up. It would be.
She has the ability to talk to whoever she wants. She can subpoena anybody.
Exactly, and that's what she was saying to Scott Blowdorn. Her investigator says, "Well, you can either answer my questions now, or you'll be doing so on a witness stand." And that's when he shut up, didn't he? He said, "Oh, I'm not saying anymore."
Mm-hmm.
Here I've been talking about the, arrogance of Kratz, and literally in the way that he used the information, given to him in trust by a domestic violence victim, and he betrayed that trust and made the entire Wisconsin District Attorneys Association look bad by his actions, so that possibly future crime victims may not want to hand over information like that or get involved because of this.
Well, can you remember what Pete Bates said? Not in Making a Murderer, but in another interview. He said, he described Ken Kratz. He said, he's an arrogant son of a bitch, and you can quote me on that. Now, I mean, dude, what are your thoughts on Robert Milan? Right. He's a rarity. Well, both of you. He's a rarity, yeah? A rarity. This is why you have to watch The Confession Killer. There is a district attorney in The Confession Killer that will bring you so much joy at the fact that, hooray, we found another district attorney that's honest, ethical. And when you realize what Vic Purcell went through, my God, he is a real hero. He really is a hero. It's just a shame that he didn't decide to go into politics. But no, he certainly realized what he was up against. The sort of powers that are out there that you're up against. Where does Ken Kratz get his authority from? He gets his authority from basically the judges, doesn't he? And then those further up in the Wisconsin Department of Justice. They sat on the sexton for a year. It was clearly eventually Kratz is right. Somebody within the DOJ leaked to Ryan Foley about what had happened because they couldn't stand the fact that this guy Ken Kratz was going to get away with it again, and as soon as it bust, Jim Doyle is saying, anybody else want to tell me about Ken Kratz? 15 people came forward.
Well, just look at the Michael Bell case in Kenosha.
Yeah,
absolutely. They got more than enough evidence that they're lying about what happened,
I mean, how many different stories did they came up as to how
They made
Carl got shot?
They made reenactment videos trying to depict what they say happened, and
Yeah.
And at this point, I bring up that one of those officers in that case actually, when it was all before it was all over and done, actually committed suicide because of all the stress and anguish of the situation. I mean, Michael Bell Jr., Michael Bell, the kid that got killed. I mean, he was just a young teenager, and I'm sure that was weighing on the guy. And I feel terrible in a way, but in another way, they were all still trying to cover it up, just like Millbilly was saying. They even went as far as to make reenactment videos to try to back up their story, and that ended up being proven false. And
they made a mistake. That's all they had to do was just admit that they made a mistake.
Reputation is everything, though, isn't it?
To justify everything. Like just that whole case, that the Court of Appeals sent the case to the judge that it's just retarded.
Mm-hmm.
And here I'm talking about the fact that the Michael Bell case caused something unique to happen, and that is that he, after winning the case against these Kenosha Police Department eventually for the wrongful death of his son, because the officers had clearly told some lies, and they had it was proven. They even tried to lie twice, create a reenactment that was proven false. And anyway, it went on, and it was bad, but they lost the case. And so Michael Bell had all the money from that, and he used it to push to have legislation put through that requires any officer involved shooting must be investigated by an outside department. It can no longer be done internally, which had been done by Kenosha originally on this case. So he got that legislation passed.
Well, the Michael Funk case, the cop that shot him.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have been there. He should not have been there.
Hoffer is the officer he's talking about. So here I'm going through talking about, number one, the fact that he was hitting the helmet should have taken him out of the game immediately. In fact, he had a superior officer telling him so, and he was arguing with that superior officer, saying no, and she tells him, we have enough people, and he's like, no, we don't have enough people, and he's just like a spoiled child that will not accept no for an answer, like he's gonna hold his breath or something. I don't know, it's really bizarre to watch, but he's clearly being ordered not to get involved, yet he went and got back involved. So I talk about that. And then I also talk about the fact that we see him on Officer Ross's body cam footage, where he's saying that nobody in there was a hostage. And then he goes on to say it was a setup. I mean, it's just bizarre, because when you look at the inside footage of Eagle Nation, set up for what? Everybody, when you guys came in that door and bullets started flying, everybody started hiding except for Flatoff. He continued to fire, and he hit Hoffer in the helmet. That's the reality of it. And so that's what I'm basically talking about here. Since Millbilly brought up the Michael Funk case. Obviously, we got the $50 million bullet coming out the end of 2020. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2020, essentially. But so that's going to be interesting. It's going to be, a very interesting, eye-opening kind of thing for the people in that area to see what really happened there.
I'll tell you what's a very sad theme throughout all of this is that in 1985, they wrongfully convicted Stephen Avery. They have never once issued him an apology for that. The best I got from Sheriff Herman in a text message, in an email, was that the 85 case was, quote, unfortunate. We have the Michael Bell case, again, never an apology.
Nope.
We've got the Michael Funk case. I actually asked Rob Bellin, has there ever been
the officer that killed Michael Bell, his father actually recorded the encounter. It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
He confronts him somewhere, and they talks about it.
Yeah. But the problem with giving an apology is that it then admits certain liability, doesn't it?
But he was more asking for his forgiveness for him doing what he did, and trying to justify what happened.
Yeah, and it's like the problem is that when it then goes up to, well, certainly in the case of Michael Funk, of course, it went all the way up to the Attorney General, Brad Schimmel, who then, guess what? As with all the other attorney generals, it's a bit like, well, J.B. Van Hollen swept Kratz's sexting under the carpet. He was happy to do that. Why? Because of Ken Kratz's unconditional support for Van Hollen and the department.
Well,
we know what
the paintbrush team was blamed for the reason for Stephen went to jail in '85.
Yeah,
they claim that she identified the wrong person. Law enforcement had no fault.
She's the only one that's apologized in that whole case. She has apologized to Steve. She told him so.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about the fact that, it affects their credibility so much. This is why the Stephen Avery case was so important. It wasn't really the money. It's the fact that you've got this dude from a scrapyard who's hauling the police into the public, and then they're gonna produce a bill named the Stephen Avery bill, and they're good. And this whole business of Manitou Sheriff's Department being held responsible for what happened. They just cannot have that, because that just destroys their credibility, doesn't it?
Well, just think if he would have kept his lawsuit going, won, found out he was framed, and then with this case, could have been easily argued. I mean,
but when you look at what's happening in this case, the fact that they are hanging on, you've got a Judge Sukrich, who's acting as if she's an assistant district attorney or district attorney. It's like they're holding on to this ever rising balloon, and they just cannot let go now.
Yeah, I hear him saying, and now they've waited too long, and it's too late. So
the time to have come clean would have been when Making a Murderer first came out. But what did they do? They circled the wagons. They closed ranks. And all we've had it'll be nearly 4 years, won't it, since Making a Murderer first came out? It is exactly 4 years yet. It wasn't it? On no, it was the 15th. Was it, or the 18th of December?
So today's the 18th. Well, now it's the 19th, but
today. Well, yeah. The dude is you're still on the 18th, aren't you? It was 18th of December. It came out, wasn't it?
I'm saying I think that's right, but I didn't watch it until January 15th myself.
No, so it is exactly 4 years. And what have we seen? Kathleen Zellner has developed so much evidence. You've got like some Millbilly. You listen to thousands of hours of phone conversations. Has your opinion ever changed, Millbilly?
No. I'm still thinking the same way I always have.
Yeah. Kathleen Zellner is still on this case. She warned Stephen Avery. If you're guilty, I'll drop you.
Calumet found it.
Yeah.
Yep. I like it. After all the stuff I've done, all the research, I've never once thought Stephen Avery was guilty.
Here I'm bringing up that it just seems more impropriety of the state by holding back the RAV4 and not wanting to let Zellner test it, when letting Zellner test the RAV4 would only ultimately work in their favor if they're correct that Stephen Avery did this, because then she will find out. And she's always said that. My initial thought when I watched Making a Murderer was I was annoyed at what Manitou County Sheriff's Department had done, and the fact that they are embarrassing
basically law enforcement everywhere, because if people see that this whole idea of not in my backyard, a lot of people think a bit like me here in Scotland. I didn't think that there would ever be a case here in Scotland where somebody could be wrongfully convicted the way that Luke Mitchell was. And it makes you realize, yes, this does happen. And what annoys me is the fact that what Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department and obviously Calumet have done is they have embarrassed law enforcement in their county, in their state, in the country. And it makes people realize, if it can go on there, it can go on anywhere. My immediate thought was, I'm going to get in touch with Sheriff Herman and find out what the hell he has to say for all of this, Mm-hmm. And I must admit, I was taken aback by his sort of, oh, well, there's nothing to worry about. No, it's all fine here. Everything's hunky-dory. I get on fine with Andrew Colburn. There's no animosity there, blah, 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 blah. And you think, gee whiz, they really, there is no way that they're ever going to admit to anything. That I can imagine that the Sheriff's Department, they are just going to try and dodge everything.
Mm-hmm.
This. Yeah, I mean, this whole idea of Griesbach saying if there was ever any, what was his term? The slightest of evidence. Michael, there isn't the slightest of evidence. There's a mountain of evidence of planting, and yet you still don't want to accept that it could have happened.
Mm-hmm. It'd be nice if we could get actual officer reports. If they made them.
Here I brought up that it would be interesting to get like some of their personal notes that they made. They used to, like, the officers carried around little notebooks and stuff like that. And I brought up that one of them at trial said he didn't have his from back then, and Paul comes up with who that was.
Yeah, wasn't that the guy Ort, Jason Ort, that was the first one to keep a log, and he kept it in his notepad. And then Fassbender came along and said, "Oh, I want to start a proper log." Yeah. So he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. He knows what needed to be done. Well, he knows perfectly well that if there's something that the defense could get hold of that could help them, he might as well keep it in his possession.
Mm-hmm.
After I get done laughing here, because I really did find Paul's comment funny, I get to talking about how it is ridiculous that somehow Tom Fassbender is keeping a CD in his own personal custody. I mean, how does that work? What is that? I mean, that's just bizarre. So I got from talking about Fassbender and the CD to talking about how they misrepresented the Dassey computer and said that it was Brendan's computer in more attempts to misdirect Dean and Jerry.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we see in that Tyson video that the computer is in Bobby Dassey's bedroom. And you can hear in the dispatch or the jail calls, Stephen asking Brian to go on the internet and look up things, because supposedly somebody called about the van. How did it get entered in Auto Trader if she never left the property? If one thing was planted, it all was, and it all starts with the RAV4.
Yep. I've brought up an email to Ken Kratz and his reply. I'm not going to read all of it because it goes on too long. My bit, that is. I put it at the end, but given the fact that there was zero physical evidence against Brendan, you chose not to use the contents of the computer that you had identified as being his. Was that a tactical decision? ? His reply, right? Let's see. You claim to have read documents and examined photos, presumably trying to learn all you can about this case. But the one publication you are likely to find your answers, my book, you avoid like shepherd's pie. Let's see. If you only read materials that are likely to strengthen your already held belief in the truth of any contested issue, I think they have a word for that. Oh, yes, confirmation bias. If you are trying to save a few pounds, my book is being released in paperback on October with 2 new chapters. I assume you realize that most of the 1-star reviews never read my book. Amazon refuses to remove obviously fraudulent reviews, even if clear coordinated efforts to kill sales, unless your name is Hillary Clinton, whose book got the benefit of Amazon removing all the 1-star reviews, saying it was obvious the writer's goal was to hurt sales. Sounds familiar. Well, Ken, that was a great answer. Great answer. You know, now I understand why you didn't use the computer.
He answered every question that Paul never asked. But that's hilarious. Except he didn't answer the question Paul did ask as to whether that was a tactical decision, whether or not to use the computer at Brendan's trial. Hilarious.
The interesting thing is that obviously Derek Edmond, my pal, he works for Amazon. He says no. They were verified sales that gave him the 1-star reviews. I read a load of them. You know, it was my favorite one was the one where he talks about Ken Kratz coming across as being a drunk, wielding an angry drunk, wielding a bottle, broken bottle, waving at the world. I told you I was like, no, Ken, you're wrong. Get over it. You know, and Kathleen Zellner, doesn't she? She talks about the fact that she is particularly looking forward to the unmasking of Ken Kratz.
Yeah,
that's going to be good. I think you're right, Millbilly. The truth is out there. Yeah. The truth is out there. Somebody's going to find it, and it's going to be Zellner, isn't it? Well, with the help of all these researchers doing all this sterling work in, listening to the phone calls. Yes. You read it?
And hours and hours and hours and hours.
At this point, I thank my guest for being on. It was very interesting.
You're welcome. Indeed.
As well.
So that was my chat with Millbilly and Paul. Hopefully that was, a little bit more palatable, the way that I did it that time, just so that it didn't break up the flow of the conversation. But so that's our, Paul and Billy and I pointing out improprieties in this case where they just are so many that it can't just be explained away as innocent. There's just no way to do that. And in this series, as we count down to Christmas, it's about revealing DisingenuWisconsin. The word that Rule coined. So, anyways, all right. So it's like I said, Kratz. These 2 videos were originally meant to be about Kratz and Kuss Road, and that's what they were. But obviously, towards the end, we were getting into some other topics and everything, which is fine. Because if it's all showing the impropriety in Wisconsin, then that's what we're looking to do, and that's what we're here for. So, ultimately, in the end, we're fighting the good fight. So, it was great to talk to these 2. I'm going to do it again, but this time I'm going to make sure I get my audio along with it, so you guys can hear all 3 of us chatting. I am, like I said, once again, sorry about the little technical difficulties that we had, or that I had, I should say. So, but otherwise, it was a great chat. And just remember, Ken Kratz, being one of the prosecutors in this case, his morals and his, ethics are very meaningful. That's a big deal. Something that can't just be dismissed lightly. And if he was up to the things that he was up to, the sexting and all the things, and all this various activity that he was up to, you can't say that he was you can't really say that you have faith in his ability as a prosecutor if he was willing to do such, just horrible things, but then act like he was the victim. Like, well, how could the OLR bring charges against him? How could, when the DOJ obviously gave, Ryan Foley some information, and he's asking Ryan Foley, who gave you that? Who gave you that? It's like, it's always all about him. It's not about, anyway. That's Ken Kratz. So, yeah, he taints this case by being involved in it. Just by his sheer involvement in it. He taints it. And that's why we went ahead and we were talking about Ken Kratz. As far as Cuss Road goes, Cuss Road is just an absolute what the hell kind of thing. Because like I said, number one, you have all that activity that's going on over there. All those emergency vehicles, all the attention over there, all the bodies over there, everybody, all that stuff that was going on over there. Particularly on the 7th. Okay? Because that's when they're getting their crime scene tech, Ertl, over there to excavate a spot of strange earth, as they describe it, and it ended up being a rotten stump, as Ertl said. But I don't know. It's just bizarre, because then the next day, the bones are turning up in the burn pit behind Avery's garage, but they're not thinking to get Ertl there. Like, what? Yeah, it's just bizarre. It's just strange. The whole thing, it's why, why wouldn't you have, you think about it. They didn't have Ertl there. They didn't want Ertl there when they found him. They barred the coroner who was bringing a forensic anthropologist because they didn't want that, obviously. It's like when you can see what they are so obviously avoiding, then that there's something dirty going on. There's something under the surface, something under the table that's not outwardly visible. That's anyway. But there's something going on, because why would you do that? Why would you in multiple ways fail to bring out the qualified personnel? I just, what I mean? Why would you do that? It doesn't make sense to do that. No, I can't think of any reason why it makes sense to do that. Okay? Especially when you think about it, because over on Cuss Road, we had Michael Bushman. Now, remember I said the coroner was barred. The coroner who was planning to bring the proper, forensic anthropologist, which was required here, was barred. She belonged to the only department of Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department that didn't have a conflict of interest. But all the other departments, that did have a conflict of interest were allowed in. In fact, they bring Michael Bushman out of retirement. He was actually on the original arrest party for Stephen Avery back in 1985. He was one of the cops that was there to arrest him. One of the deputies that was there to arrest him. And he gets brought out of retirement. And he's over there on Cuss Road on the 7th. It's just bizarre stuff. It's too bizarre. It's, why would you want to have these people? Why would you be calling people out of retirement in an already conflict of interest situation? And you're going to go and calling people out of retirement to come help? Yeah, it's just... Especially somebody who was on the original arrest party for Stephen's original wrongful conviction. Right? Yeah. So, yeah, that's what it is. So, I just wanted to point some of those things out. Obviously, as we are here counting down to Christmas, here. And like I said, had a brilliant chat with Millbilly and Paul. We're going to do it again soon. We'll probably wait for whatever Millbilly's next day off is, and we'll do it then. So, all right. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.